Hey, what's going on? It is 12 noon on Wednesday, which means it's time for this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. I'm John Christmas. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern time, to help you understand the technical side of the real estate industry and what we're talking about today. We had a really popular show last week about pricing property to sell and what you have to do to price a property to sell and how do you hit that magic number of being in that right spot where you're able to get it sold as quickly as possible with the most money in your pocket as quickly as possible. But one of the things I had mentioned going into that whole pricing property to sell is how bad do you need to sell it, because that's ultimately going to change where you price the property at. If somebody needs to sell the property, that's when that previous episode is really important for pricing the property to sell. But where selling the property is maybe more of a luxury or an option, not necessarily a need, but more of a want, you might wonder this question that we're talking about today: is today the best day, the best time period to buy or sell real estate? And I mean, you look at it, it can't be the best for both sides of it, buying and selling, because, somebody's got to be the winner in this transaction, or that's at least how most people look at this. So what we're going to be doing today is diving into this so you can understand in your particular market what the factors are that play into this that make something a great deal or maybe a terrible deal, because they're both out there right now. So we're going to help you understand that a little bit more. My name is John Christmas. You're watching Ask the Instructor. And welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor, where today we're talking about the topic of now. Is now the time to buy or sell? And this is a question that people ask regardless of what's going on in the world. Everything could be completely normal, and people are still going to ask the same question: is now the time to buy or is now the time to sell? And the difference now being is there's a lot more of us on that same page, just because of external circumstances that aren't necessarily directly something coming from our world, but the greater world that we live in. So the question that you're ultimately asking, let's put yourself in the consumer shoes, in the home buyers or home sellers shoes, because if you want to be able to serve more clients, more customers, more people, you have to understand where they're coming from and what position they're in. Because the first question I would ask is, now the time to buy or sell? Look, regardless of what's going on in the market, we've got to get clear first on what you're trying to do as a consumer. Again, as a consumer, and these are the same conversations you want to have with your customers when they ask you, because I guarantee you get asked this question all the time. Hey, is now the time? Should I wait? Or should I do it now? And the typical salesperson answer is, oh no, you should just do it now. Well, what does that feel like to the customer? What does that feel like to your client if you're just telling them, oh yeah, now? Oh yeah, now's definitely the best time, trust me. Usually when you have to say trust me, it's because they don't trust you. And if they don't trust you, they're probably not going to make the biggest purchase of their life with you, especially if they're already on the fence about it. So the first question you always want to ask is this a need? Or is it a want? Because what that helps you understand is, what is the sense of urgency? Is this somebody who is desperate to sell or buy a property? And what would make them desperate? It's really easy to sit back and say, oh, well, no one needs to buy a bigger house. You don't know that. They might need to buy a bigger house. Maybe they've got a baby on the way. Maybe they have elderly parents that are going to be moving in with them. Maybe they're planning a bigger family. Maybe this is part of their investment strategy and they're trying to take advantage of different factors. So that's the first thing. And the more it's a need, the more urgent it is. The more it's a want, the less urgent it is, which is okay. This is just so you get on the same page with your clients. You get on the same page of helping them achieve their goals, their dreams, because if it's more of a want and less of a need, that's where, again, you might not be getting business today, and that's okay. Your job is not to talk people into selling or buying. Your job is to help them make a decision. That's where a lot of salespeople get a bad reputation. Most salespeople that have a bad reputation, they became known as pushers, that they want to push something on somebody, that this one thing is their one option, their one solution, and that's it, and if they don't want it, well then too bad. And yeah, that works, but it's also not a comfortable process for your client or for yourself. So we're here. Our job is to help facilitate a decision. Whether they do want to sell or they don't want to sell. Hey, let's just make a decision. Let me give you the information. One way or the other. Look, if you don't want to sell today, that's fine. I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be here 6 months and a year from now. We could sell it then. That's no problem. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable and you're making the best decision for you and your family. How much better does that sound than, oh yeah, you got to sell right now, you're going to miss out on blah, 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 blah. No, they don't want to listen to that. They don't want to listen to you pound into them saying, oh yeah, you need. No, they're the decider of what they need and what they want. So it's not your job to pound it into them, but it can be. You do have to have some difficult conversations to be able to pull this information out of them. Is this a need or is this a want? Because if this is a need, if this truly is a need, well, it doesn't matter what's going on in the market. That's when this truly becomes a need, where as long as they can afford it, as long as they're capable, it doesn't matter where prices are going up or down or what's going on in the market. If it truly is a need, then that doesn't matter. And those are really easy sales, because at that point, a lot of times they've got this sense of urgency, and you don't have to do any convincing that I'm making the decision. They've already made that decision, and they just need you to help them carry out that decision. Now, people on the want side, people that are more so towards this, and it's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. It's not, hey, I need to sell or I don't need to sell. There's a lot of gradation in between this here. So the people that want to sell, this might be more so along the lines of, yeah, I do want to sell, and maybe it's a little bit more of a need. Maybe we're planning to have a family, but, where we're living right now doesn't work for that, so we want to do that. And it's the whole thing. I mean, especially when people are talking about, having kids and whatnot, they'll say, oh, there's never a perfect time for it. There's never a perfect time to buy a house either. It doesn't matter what's going on. It's never 100% perfect. Don't expect any of your transactions to go perfect. Don't expect any of your clients to be perfect. Nothing is perfect. So just drop that whole perfect word from your vocabulary. But anyways, getting as close to perfect as we could get, it starts out, okay, just understanding the client. Okay, is this a need or is this a want? Because that might answer the question right there. If they need it, well, it doesn't matter whether it's a good or bad time. You need it, so that overweighs that. Now, if they don't need it right now, then that won't overweigh whatever is currently going on. And I don't mean right now, I mean anytime, regardless of what's going on in their personal situation or the larger market around them. Now, the second thing that you want to look at, and so this is a huge thing right now, is the financing options. Because this could go either way, and it depends on who the lenders are that they're talking to, what position that they're in. Maybe even this is depending on what market you're in, that maybe you have some tighter or more loose markets. It depends. But that could be something that is another thing that a lot of people don't necessarily always factor in and think about when they're thinking about buying a home. And also they don't think about it if they're selling a home. They don't think with selling a home how important financing availability is. Well, think of this from a seller's perspective. If somebody does not have the cash to buy what you are selling, how are they going to buy it? Well, with real estate, they usually go borrow that money. But what happens if they can't borrow the money or it's too expensive to borrow the money? Are they still going to want to come buy that house? Probably not. So the financing, the more incentivized it is for financing, the lower your interest rates go, the more available credit is, and so on and so forth, the more it becomes a better investment buying the real estate. I mean, if you could really, again, minimize and because you're financing such a high dollar amount, even if you just have a fraction of a percentage of interest, like you lower your interest like 1/8%, that's probably going to save you thousands of dollars. Any little bit, because this is amortized out across 30 years, and you usually get your biggest savings up front because of the way amortization works. With amortization, this is how most financing works. You pay a very large portion of interest at the beginning. And what that does is, so Just real quick on amortization, just in case you're not familiar with the idea of amortization. Amortization means that your interest is compounded based on your current balance, meaning your interest is calculated and figured out based on how much money you currently owe. And when are you going to owe the most money? Well, let's say you bought this house for $300,000. You maybe took out a $300,000 loan, let's say. If you took out a $300,000 loan, your interest for the first month is going to be based on the $300,000 balance. But when you pay down that balance a little, the next month your balance is a little smaller, so your interest is going to be a little bit smaller. And then what happens over time is, yes, you do start off paying a very large portion of your payment going towards interest, but then over time it diverts more now to be your principal payment, actually paying down your balance. And what that means, I know these colors are kind of light here, I don't know if you can see them all the way. What that means is that if you decide to sell your home, like the average homeowner in the United States sells their home every 5 to 7 years. 5 to 7 years. So they're coming up on that 5 to 7 year period. They're probably thinking about this if they're selling. And buying, it's maybe even a shorter of a window. People think about buying a lot more before they think about selling. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But let's say you decide to sell your property right here. You've had very little payments towards your principal. And maybe after 5 years, who knows, maybe your balance here is only at, I don't know, $280,000. Who knows, maybe that's even asking a lot for you to pay it down $20,000 in 5 years. That depends on how much interest. Because if you have a lower rate of interest, if you keep the payment the same, what that's going to do, we'll throw a lower rate of interest in blue. If you have a lower rate of interest, that means your interest is going to amortize faster because you pay less money to the bank. And if you make the same amount of payment, you're going to have more money paying down your loan balance. So what that does is that puts you in a lot better position. Now these maps, these graphs here are not to scale by any means. Because this all depends on what the individual numbers are in the scenario that you're looking at here. But anything you could do to decrease this interest means that you're going to have more money paying down your loan balance. And that's going to have you sitting a lot better 5 years into owning the property because your loan balance might not be 280, maybe it's only 270. Which you might look at that and say, oh, that's not a big deal. That's only another $10,000. Well, it's hard to say that it's only $10,000. Who knows? Maybe it's even more than that. That's why you got to run these numbers. That's why you've got to look at this from all angles, really, if you want to make this decision and make the right decision. And an average homeowner, this might be all this stuff that we're talking about here. There's a lot of this that's probably going straight over their head. You know, when you're trying to communicate with homeowners, you guys here, I'm assuming you guys are all real estate professionals or maybe aspiring real estate professionals, so hopefully you're able to kind of keep up with some of the stuff it is that we're talking here. But if we're talking to an average homeowner, this is not how I would speak to an average homeowner. For those words like amortization and things like that, those are big words that not everyone always knows the meaning of. And I don't necessarily mean that we're talking down to clients, but you don't want to talk over their head because no one's going to admit it when you're talking over their head and everything that you're saying is flying right over their head because they don't understand the words that you're using. They just want to sell their house. They don't need to know what amortization is. So again, we've got to distill this down, or as some people like to say, dumb it down, and really just make it more communicatable. So financing could be a huge thing right there. Of another reason why maybe it is the time not just to buy but also to sell, because remember, this doesn't just benefit the buyer. This opens the door to more buyers. The better interest rates are. Now again, the average homeowner, we start really getting into the nitty-gritty here and it might not make sense. They might not understand how it works, but most people understand that lower interest rates means that it saves you money. So people are already on board with the idea that you're selling them. You just need to help them understand how much money they would be saving compared to, say, rates 6 months ago or maybe what they're projected to be 6 months in the future, or again, whatever it is you're comparing to. So you look at those rates and then you quantify, you put a number behind it of, okay, hey, over the life of the loan, how much more is that going to cost you for that extra 0.25% of interest? it's probably going to be a lot of money because 30 years of interest is an extremely long time. And not only for the life of the loan, but where does that put you at 5 years in? I like to use that number 5 years, maybe 7 years if you want to push it out a little further, but because that's the average time frame when somebody buys and sells a home. And you could run these numbers for everything with it. This is where amortization calculators come in. If you just Google amortization calculator, you could figure out how much that financing is really costing. Because what does 3% interest mean? How much does that cost me? How many dollars do I have to pull out of my pocket to pay you 3%? Well, unless we do math, we can't figure that out. That's kind of the trick with the financing world there, is you got to do the math to be able to figure out what they're trying to sell you. If you can't do the math, then you're just hoping that they're giving you a good deal. You don't know whether or not it is a good deal, and you can't make an informed decision. And maybe that's where we come in as their real estate professional to help them understand. And maybe we don't have the exact figures for them, but maybe we're comparing averages, national averages 6 months ago to today, to show the difference. Because that financing, that's a huge incentive there. But now, one of the other things that is going to be, again, what is the best time to buy or sell? Is that now? Is now the best time to buy or sell? Is it better for buying? Is it better for selling? One of the things that I would also throw in with this here is supply and demand. So that's a big thing that drives real estate one way or the other, towards a seller's market or towards a buyer's market. If we have too much demand, if there's more demand than there is supply, if there's more people wanting real estate than there is supply of real estate, that causes prices to go up. But what happens when demand of real estate goes down? Well, if demand of real estate went down, that causes prices to drop. But another thing you're seeing right now, I would say yes, there has been a drop, but people are distracted. I don't know if necessarily it's a change in demand, but people are distracted, people are scared, people are worried about potentially bigger problems unless, again, they need to sell. If it's more of a want, those are the people that are the most skeptical right now about whether or not they can get a good deal, and that's where, again, you've got to go through and walk them through all the different factors that apply in here, so that way they can make a decision. It's not your decision, it's the client's decision, but it's your job to provide them the information that they need to make a decision. Because if you're asking your clients to make a decision without information, you're asking them to do a deal without doing their due diligence. So you're doing the due diligence for them. You're giving them the information. You're doing the research. You're doing the work. You're giving them the information. And, sometimes it might even come in and say, hey, look, if I were me, I don't know, it doesn't look like it. You might be able to get more money down the road. You might be able to get more money down the road, but then again, maybe not. And do you need to sell right now, or is it more of a want? And again, one way or the other, and yeah, maybe we could. Maybe if we wanted to convince them to sell, we could. But is that going to be good for our long-term business? If this is a decision that the client didn't want to make and you talk them into making that decision, are they going to be lining up to use you again? They could, but I would say you're a lot more likely to get repeat business. Again, when you're the more open, honest, ethical provider of information. Because you give them all the information to make sense of the deal, and it might start to make sense to them. And you've got to make sense out of this if you want your clients to be able to understand this as well. Now, one of the things that you're seeing, and now this depends on your market. So I would say, yes, if you look at demand overall across the United States, demand has dropped off a little bit. Now, demand is actually starting to pick back up again if you look at statistics of showings and virtual showings and traffic on different sites and things like that. Demand actually has crept up, and I would actually even argue, because if you look at some of the statistics, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what's going on, because yes, you do see a decline in showings. Now, why is there a decline in showings? Well, because we're supposed to stay at home and stay 6 feet apart from each other, so maybe we just look at the house online and we don't waste our time going to look at it unless we really want it. That's a big part of what's going on right now. I've seen houses actually increase in value right now. Now, it's not due to a drop in demand. If anything, I would say demand is still there, but maybe people are just scared, which, yes, we could say that's a temporary pullback in demand. But the supply has also dropped down as well. Sellers are also scared. So often people look at buyers and sellers as completely different animals, but we're still all people. We're still all people living on the same planet with overall a pretty similar perspective and view on the world. So if one person gets scared, a lot of people probably get scared. And not only would buyers maybe be scared about buying right now, but maybe sellers are afraid of selling right now. And what that's caused is a lot of supply to drop down. And what that does, when supply drops, if demand stays the same, if demand is here, how much people want property, how many people want it is here, and supply goes down, if supply goes down, the availability of housing, that's going to cause pricing to rise. And I've seen that happen. I was looking at the house the other day, and I was like, it looks like this house actually went up in value, but that's because the inventory tightened. Now, at the end of the day, we're all just guessing and predicting until a house actually sells. But we could get pretty close to understanding at least a range of where we're at. And we could track these ranges and track these data points to see if these data points are moving up or moving down. Because you've all heard the phrase and expression before that numbers don't lie. You just need to look at the numbers and know what they mean. So the supply and demand side of this is huge. And that's where you've got to look at the inventory that's on the market. That's another word that people use a lot of time for supply, is the inventory. How many homes are actually available in the market? And the whole thing where they say, oh, if there's 6 months worth of supply, that's an equilibrium market, and anything less than 6 months of supply is a seller's market. So that whole supply and demand, we could do a whole episode on that. But just again, the gist of that, how much people want it and how many homes that are available. And you can kind of fill in the blanks the more you think about that. Okay, if there's more homes available but people don't want it, well, that's going to cause prices to drop, and vice versa. Because again, you've got to look at this not for the United States, not for Florida, not for Hillsborough County, not for the city of Tampa, but for the individual neighborhood that you're helping somebody potentially buy or sell, or at least helping them make the decision as to whether or not they want to buy and sell that property. But again, these factors can change based on the area it's in. The financing can change. You know, great example of that is the USDA loans. The USDA loan program isn't available everywhere. So as your geographic changes, as you get into more rural areas, there's a whole nother branch of financing that's available. And again, this is how real estate is local. Real estate is extremely local, and all of these factors change, not just based on the local area, but based on your individual client as well. Now, some of the things it is that you can control, and this is where a lot of real estate professionals are struggling to try to figure this out if they have not used digital tools previously to get exposure for this property. So like I said, if you look at the data, showings dipped down in March. Overall showings for the month of March went down, which honestly, is that a surprise? No, it's not. When we're told to stay home and stay away from other people, if we don't have to go somewhere, we're probably not going to go somewhere. And so what that did, if traditional real estate of just, you know, how they practice real estate basically back in like the 70s and 80s before there was the internet, and you just go look at homes rather than looking at them online, that's what you're doing if it's 2020 and you're not taking advantage of all the digital tools that are out there to gain exposure for the property. So that's your job as a real estate professional, at least I would say working on the seller. If you're working with a buyer, you're not necessarily trying to, well, I guess you kind of are, because you're trying to find, okay, the more homes, the more supply that you can expose that buyer to, maybe the lower it is they're going to get on a price, which might make it a better deal. As there's more supply, you might be exposed to more homes available. But the big thing I want to focus on here is on the selling side. Let's say you've got a client, a seller that's thinking about selling, and if the only way it is that you're going to market this property is basically just, you know, put it in the MLS and scheduling showings and maybe occasionally holding an open house, a year ago, that was a perfectly fine strategy that would get the home sold. Not necessarily for top dollar usually, but it would get the home sold. Now, you might not even, depending on what's going on in your market and where you're located in the world, there's MLSs that don't allow in-person showings, that will restrict it, or maybe unless you get permission of the seller, then you're allowed to show it. Or whatever the restrictions it is they may be putting in there, you might not be even able to do this the traditional way right now. So are you going to innovate? And it's not even innovation, you're really just borrowing innovation. The innovation's already existing. You do not have to innovate, you just have to adapt your business to the innovations that are out there for 3D virtual tours, for photos. I mean, we always have photos, but having lots of photos, not just like 4, 5, 6 photos of a property. I don't care if this is a 1,000 square foot home. I want to see all the details. I want to see the sink fixtures. I want to see what the bathtub looks like. I want to see what the sink in the kitchen looks like. I want to see what the appliances look like. I want to see the laundry room. I want to see everything that I would normally look at when I'm there in the property. And now you could upload like a ridiculous amount of pictures to most MLSs and most of these online portals, so there's no reason you shouldn't be maximizing the exposure that you get through photos as well as videos, as well as, and this is really, I would say, the big one that's probably going to be the best thing you can do right now, is virtual tours. Now, regardless of what goes on in the world right now, do not stop doing this when things go back to normal. Back to when you can do open houses and you can do regular showings, you don't want to drop off on this, because when you gain more exposure for the property, you expose it to more buyers. And when you expose it to more buyers, well, then that allows you to command a higher price. Because in theory, if you expose to more buyers, you're probably going to get more buyers interested in buying it, or at least more buyers that potentially interested in seeing it, and that's going to increase the demand for your individual property that you're looking at right there by increasing the exposure. Now, with a lower exposure, not as many people are going to see it, you're not going to get as high of a price. So not only is it good for your client to get more exposure, for your seller to get more exposure for the property, but it's also going to help you market your business, because you're going to have your brokerage name and your name tagged right along on the postcard you send out, the ads you run, or however it is that you're advertising and marketing this property you have for sale. You could use that exposure that you're getting for the property, not just to get more exposure for the property, but get more exposure for your real estate business as well. Because the exposure, let's talk about the buyer side a little bit of that. Extremely important. So if you could expose, if the seller could expose the property to more buyers, they're going to command a higher price. Because we've got one unit of supply, all we need is one buyer. We've got one house, all we need is one buyer. Now, if we've got one house, but we have two buyers, what's going to happen to the price? Well, price will creep up, because these two buyers might bid at each other. They might try to creep each other up in the price, and the seller ends up winning. And the more buyers you have, if you just have two buyers, okay, that's cool. But what if you have 3? What if you have 4? What if you have 5 buyers? You have 5 buyers all competing for the same house that they want. That's going to drive your prices way up. Now, on the flip side of things, you might not have that. Maybe, again, there's not as much exposure. Maybe the supply and demand. Maybe there's a lot of real estate available. And so now that greater exposure is happening on the buyer's side, that there's not just one house they have to choose from. They might have 5 houses to choose from. And they could go check out this one and say, do I get a deal here? No, this one isn't perfect. No, this one isn't perfect. This one's a good price, but still don't like it. Oh, wow, this one's a great price. Doesn't seem like anybody else wants it. There's all these other houses out there for sale, so let's get a deal on this one. So depending on who's getting the greater exposure, is there more demand or is there more supply? That's going to really depend on, okay, again, is it more of a buyer's market or more of a seller's market? And that's who the advantage goes to. If it's a seller's market, it's an advantage to the seller. If it's a buyer's market, it's an advantage to the buyer. So that getting more exposure for the property is huge, and that's going to definitely help out for the seller getting more exposure. But let's say you're working with a buyer, if you could expose them to more properties, if there's more potential properties that fit for them, that potentially will work. Now, yes, ultimately we've got to narrow it down to one, but the more options we have available, the more inventory we have to choose from. Let's say you got the same exact house and you get to choose if you want it in white or gray. Well, now you've got choices. So that, again, lowers pricing. So recapping some of the stuff we've got here, is now the best time to buy or sell. And look, when I make these videos here, not to be, again, specific to this time right now, but to teach you guys practices and ideas and concepts that are universally applicable anytime. Anything that's going on, whether it's a buyer's market, seller's market, these things that you're going to look at to understand, okay, to help make your client make a better decision, the decision that's maybe best for them, you're providing this information. So first, hey, it's about you. Do you need to sell right now, or do you just want to sell right now? Because maybe they got a new job. Maybe they've got a baby on the way. Maybe they can't afford their current payments. Who knows what it is that makes them in the category that they need to sell? That's where all these other things become less relevant. But when it's just that they want to sell, but they don't necessarily need to sell, okay, well, let's look at financing. Are you saving money now, or are you paying more money right now? But that's just one element. Because even if you ended up paying more money with the financing, maybe these other factors here are what's going to help get you a better deal here. You might find as a buyer an underexposed property. So if you find a property right now that's on the market that doesn't have a virtual tour, that doesn't have many pictures, and you find this in any market where some real estate professionals are just, I don't know, they just don't care maybe they don't know how to do everything. Who knows? Maybe they're just not being paid much. Who knows what it is where you see a listing that's underexposed. But if you've got a buyer maybe that's potentially interested in that, here's something you could do right now. Maybe they don't want to rush to go out and go into somebody else's home during the midst of a pandemic, but maybe you don't mind popping in there. Maybe you throw on a mask and some gloves, or maybe you don't. Who knows? That's your choice. Probably, unless the government says it's not your choice, but we'll assume it's your choice now. So you maybe go in there and you maybe take a video of the property. You maybe go on with FaceTime or Zoom or Skype or one of these platforms to go in there and show them this property. And maybe they do like it. And now you have an advantage over all the other buyers out there because your buyer has seen what that house looks like on the inside in greater detail than what's available online. So that can be huge as well, and it gives you a huge advantage. Look, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Stick with us. I'm John Chrismo. You're watching Ask the Instructor.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of Ask the Instructor. My name is John Chrismo. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every single Wednesday, 12 noon Eastern Time, to help you understand the technical side of the real estate industry and what we're talking about today, because this is a question a lot of people are wondering, and that's what you need to do. You need to figure out what your clients, what your customers, what your consumers want to know or need to know, and you need to figure out the best, most effective way to deliver that information to them. But not just delivering the information, but making sure there's communication. Communication is different than just providing information. Providing information is real easy. You might whip out like a brochure, imagine this is a brochure, and just hand somebody a brochure. That's giving them information. Now, some of you guys might be talkers, maybe don't hand out brochures, and you're just blah, 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 and you're just throwing up words on them because you think you're a good talker. I could talk pretty good. But what's more important when you're selling isn't talking, it isn't speaking. That's why the old saying that you got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason is you should listen twice as much as you speak. And that's so important in sales, because if you don't listen to what your client says, how do you know what decision they want to make? So you've got to listen. Yes, it's important that you provide this information, but you've got to do it in a communicative manner where it's a two-way communication. Not just delivering information to them, but a two-way communication. So walking them through and making sure they understand not just these concepts, but how these concepts apply to their individual property and their individual property needs. Because one of these things, any one of these things, could be the reason why they are buying or selling. It just be maybe because they need to, or maybe just because they want to. Maybe because they want to take advantage of the financing situation. Maybe they want to take advantage of the supplier demand. Maybe they want to take advantage of being able to hire a great realtor that's going to get great exposure for their listing. Or maybe hiring a great realtor as a buyer's agent that's going to help them find as many options that are available. That's where you see, like with buyer's agents, where they're trying to find like off-market deals and for sale by owners. They're trying to increase the amount of properties they're exposing to their clients. So any one of these things on their own could be enough for them to make the decision, again, depending on what their circumstances are and what's important to them, but you're not going to know that unless you get in communication with them and develop, again, a two-way communication with your client. Not to just where you're speaking, but they're also providing information back to you, you're listening, you're making sure that you understand. That's another thing, too. One of my pet peeves is people who listen to respond. If you listen to respond, you're not even achieving the reason why you're in the conversation. You don't listen to respond, you listen to understand. You listen to understand, to figure out what's really going on, because sometimes the words just don't come out right. Sometimes the things that we say aren't what we mean. We've all done that before. We've all hurt somebody's feelings when we say something that we didn't really mean and the words just came out wrong. That happens with our clients too, except for they probably won't tell you when you hurt their feelings. They just don't do business with you. So it's really important that not just that you listen, but you're also listening to understand, so that way the follow-up information that you're able to provide is going to be the most applicable to what's really going on with them. So that's all the time we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you like this episode, seems like you guys like stuff where we talk about pricing and understand market values and things like that. If you like this, hit that thumbs up button and we'll be sure to do more episodes. That's how we literally go in and we'll look at how many people viewed certain videos, how many people liked them, and that's how we determine, okay, what topics do people want to know about? So if there's something that you're curious about, drop that in the comments. Hit us with a like on this video. If you're interested in getting your real estate license, or maybe you've got a complete post licensing, or maybe you want to take advantage of time right now to be able to get your broker license, we've got those programs available for you. We've got great study tools to help you prepare for your real estate exam, and we've got advisors standing by to help walk you through everything it is we have to offer and what is going to be best for you. We know how to listen here, so give us a call. Phone number is 813-333-2676. Again, that's 813-333-2676. Or check us out online at tampaschool.com. That's all the time we've got for today. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you Friday for State of Real Estate. Hey, so if you're thinking about starting a real estate career, it could feel a little overwhelming sometimes. Look, that's completely understandable. That's why we're here to help. If you haven't already, check out our Success Center, tampaschool.com/success. Or if you don't even know where to begin, give us a call. We'd love to help you out. We've got advisors standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way it is that we can. Our phone number is 813-928-0106. Again, that's 813-928-0106. Give us a call. We're the Tampa School of Real Estate.
Do you want a career that allows you to be in control? With a career in real estate, you'll get to call the shots. Whether you're looking at starting part-time or want to become the next top agent, a career in real estate makes it possible. Find out what it takes at tampaschool.com. Do you want to incorporate studying for your real estate exams into your busy schedule? Now you can review the key topics you need to know to pass your class and state exams with our MP3 audio review. Simply pop in your headphones or connect to your car to reinforce crucial information while you exercise or drive. Listen to the first unit for free at mp3audioreview.com. That's mp3audioreview.com.
Are you thinking about a career in real estate? Hey, I'm John Chrisma with the Tampa School of Real Estate, and we've helped thousands of people just like you obtain their real estate license. If you're thinking about a career in real estate, give us a call. The phone number is 813-928-0106. Our advisors are standing by to answer any questions you have and assist you in any way they can. Hey, if you're enjoying the show today, which I'm sure you are, be sure to hit like, subscribe, post your comments, share with your friends and family. Thank you guys so much for watching.